Hey, this is Jerry Best, and you're listening to Focus on Metal.
Hey, Metalhead, Scott Thompson here, welcoming you to episode 595 of Focus on Metal. So I realized as I was editing up the audio for this week's show that, holy shit, we did not put out a single episode in July. I mean, I know the summer's been busy and the weather's kind of sucked and all that, but I was actually a little bit surprised that, no episodes in July. But I will say that Richie did have this interview done back in July. It's just taken me until now to get around to editing it and putting it into a show. So this week, the guy that's on the intro is the guy that we are presenting to you on the show. That's right, journeyman bassist Jerry Best. Jerry first appeared with us on Focus on Metal back in 2014, way back on episode 183, which was episode 6 of our Strange Highways project. So if you're interested in that interview with Jerry, or this one prompts you to be interested in that, head up to focusonmetalpod.com and either pull up the projects and bring down a Strange Highways. You'll see that there, or just on the search bar, look up Jerry Best, and you'll see that episode, and you can listen to that. And speaking of which, one of the things I was doing in July, so I didn't just not do shit on the show for an entire month, but one thing I was doing is that when we went to the new website, there was a big gap in a lot of the episode data for past episodes, especially 2010 through about 2012. So I've started to go back to those original years of the show and start to put in show descriptions and all that stuff. And I'm hoping that to follow that up with getting at least some of that audio back up on the shelf as well, so that you can hear Dario and some of the stuff I did way back with Jay on Focus on Classic Metal and stuff. So I did start doing some of that in July. So slowly we're building back up some of the historical data that I didn't pull over when I did the new website. Having said that, Jerry and all the other episodes of the Strange Highways project, they've been available on focusonmetalpod.com since day one. So I head up there, check those out. Great project. We interviewed just about everybody involved with Strange Highways. And we talked to Jerry because at that point, he was in Freak of Nature, and they were the opening band for Dio on that tour. And, nowadays, Jerry is out and he's working with Mike Tramp, doing the Songs of Mike Tramp stuff. And by coincidence, we also had Mike Tramp on that project as well, because obviously Mike was the singer for Freak of Nature, and Mike is episode 206, or it translates to the Dio Project as being episode 8 of the Dio Project. So you can go back and listen to Mike's thing as well. But like I said, that's what Jerry's been doing these days, is he's been working with Mike and doing some songwriting and all that. You'll hear everything Jerry's been up to when we talk to Jerry this week. But the big reason that Richie wanted to dive into stuff with Jerry was that Richie's been a longtime Lion fan. We've had Doug Aldrich on the show several times, and we've posed a lot of Lion questions to Doug. And so Richie wanted to dive in first off with some deep dive stuff with Jerry about Lion and what happened, and even maybe what's going on with Lion nowadays and stuff. And then he dove into a lot of Freak of Nature stuff as well. And then get into what Jerry's been doing with Mike and other little things along the way. So great talk this week. Almost an hour with Jerry this week. Good stuff. He really dives into a lot of great stuff. Always a great interview. And also in talking about the whole Songs of White Lion and Mike Tramp. Those of you that don't know, that Mike is putting out a volume 2 of Songs of White Lion. So if you want to hear, how Mike sounds doing those songs today in kind of more of his normal singing key, there's that one there is available for pre-order. I think it comes out, I want to say October. I don't quite remember. But there's I know there's a black vinyl, there's the blue vinyl. There may even still be some autographed versions of it available, either in CD or vinyl. I know the vinyl was getting close to selling out. I think over the weekend when I took a look, there was maybe 35 of them left. But there is the Volume 2 coming out, available for pre-order, and obviously you can go out and get yourself your copy of Volume 1 as well. Don't even have to wait. And so with that, I'm going to shut the hell up, and I'm going to turn the mic over to Richie and our guest this week, bassist Jerry Best.
Yeah, hi, it's Jerry.
Hey, Jerry, it's Richie here. Now a good time?
How are you? Yeah,
I'm
brilliant.
okay. I'm okay. So where are you, on the West Coast?
I'm on West Coast. You're talking to me in Los Angeles.
Okay, I'm in Mattoon, Massachusetts. I'm on my lunch break.
I know it. We just played not too far from there last year.
Who'd you play with last year?
That's with Tramp and White Lion.
Oh, nice.
Right, we played, where did we play? I think, was it the Mix 360 or the Vault? One of those, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
I spoke to you about 11 years ago. We did a project on Strange Highways, the Dio record, and
right.
You did a tour with Freakin' Nature, and I'm going to get into that, but
sure.
What I really want to do is I want to concentrate with you the end of the 80s right up until the end of the 90s.
Okay, yeah,
so,
certainly.
So where I am going to start with is the Trouble in Angel City record, the Lion record that was released in 89. I know because I've spoken to you and I've spoken to Doug that you had a lot of legal issues trying to get out of the deal for the debut record.
Scott.
Yeah. So after the issues with that, did any of you guys want to know more about the business side of the music?
Well, I'll tell you, that was an early part of my career with, a lot of greenness and inexperience as to how, business works, meaning a record deal. A record deal is not unlike a bank loan. They'll give you a bunch of money, but then they're going to want it back, and they're going to want the interest back on that. And, if you have the songs and you have the popularity and you have the push behind you to make some money, writing songs and putting out product, then you're good. But if you don't get that push, you don't get the kind of money back, backing you, whether it's touring or video support or whatever it may be, then you're going to owe a bunch of money. And, no one, when you get a record deal, no one really looks at that side of it because there's a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of hope that, hey, I got signed, I'm big time now. But you certainly start realizing once you lay down a few shekels to retain a lawyer to bail you out of a bad record deal.
Yeah, it's just that when I spoke to Doug, he was very green towards it as well. That he just wanted to play music. But was there one of you guys in line that was the business guy? Maybe he was the guy that you guys said, look, will you go up and talk to the manager about this? Was there one of you guys that was assigned that task?
Yeah, it was Mark Edwards. And, Mark and I are dear friends to this day. In fact, all the Lion guys are very, very friendly. We have a group text that we catch up with each other on. But Mark was quite a bright guy. He had he later had gotten a degree from the Parsons School of Business, and now is a pretty successful money hedger down in Texas in terms of raising capital, money for big companies and stuff. So he was the closest of all of them, not to mention he had already had a record deal with not Brian Schlegel, but the other guy up in San Francisco, the guitar guy, Mark Varney. Yeah, there you go. And that was a record called Code of Honor that was an EP. It had like Tim Bogert on it, and I think Bill Leesgang as well playing guitar, English guy who used to play, I don't know, some bands there. Anyway, and he had already had, dealings in terms of, that. But he was just a little bit older than I was. So we had let him run with it. but even with his expertise and his a little bit more knowledge, it still didn't help a poor, record deal, and a manager, at that point as well, didn't really help it along either. It was not until we signed up with Steeple Phillips, which was after, who helped us try to get out of that deal with Scotti Brothers.
So right before Mark had the accident, what was the status of the band at that stage?
Well, we were going along pretty good. I mean, we had a tour. We had a couple of tours lined up that were offered to us in America, and we both couldn't take them because there was no backing from the Scotti Brothers. They didn't want to put out tour support, and so the band, was enthusiastic still, I would say, for the first 2 or 3 years. But then after, the fact that we couldn't get on these tours, that our record wasn't being promoted, the only fire that was kind of helping us was the fact that that single Power Love had actually debuted video-wise on MTV the same day that Tramp and White Lion and Wait debuted. If you know that.
No.
So, they went straight to the top and we stayed at the bottom. So it's just what it is. And, for young musicians out there listening who think, that, hey, it's all about just the music and playing and that will take care of it. Unfortunately it's not, because there's a lot of great players out there that just got some bad business and, couldn't find their way to the point of where they didn't even want to continue.
Yeah.
I mean, music business is a shitty business. I mean, unless you're a Madonna or a Springsteen or, whatever, I mean, I liken it to having a pie of 100%. And I would say 98% of the people, never will do anything. Then you got the 1%ers like me who had a taste of it. And then you got the other 1% that are hitting it big time, so it's, you have to have thick skin. I mean, at my age too, I've been doing it for a long time.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people, they can't quite handle it. But luckily for me, I have a great support system with my family and my girl. And, I'm grateful. I'm grateful my phone rings, Richie, to be honest with you.
So, Jerry, who called you to tell you what happened to Mark when he had the accident?
We got a call actually from Doug. Because he was, I believe, or they were living together over in the valley, San Fernando Valley, and Cal didn't live too far from that. And he basically told me what happened, and at that point, I mean, he was in stable condition, but he had a broken back, and effectively for him to even walk again, was questionable. So luckily, he came out of that, and when I just saw him in Dallas last year, or actually, he just came out for a thing with Ron Keel to do the Steeler track with, I think it was Mitch Perry playing guitar, and Rick Fox, I think, playing bass, and Mark, and I shot a video down at Center Stage, and I saw him briefly, but, he fared pretty well from that accident in the sense of coming back and recovery.
Yeah.
So, which is great. And now he's even playing a little bit of drums. So.
Oh, nice.
Who knows, man? I mean, we've been approached. Lion's been approached a couple of times by Larry Moran to do, some of those cruises and what have you. And, the fact that the four of us are still alive, you never say never.
But Cal is well out of the music business, though, isn't he?
Well, he actually, I just found out he has a deal going in Japan, and he may be putting out some new music soon.
Wow!
So a little bit different than, that's, I don't know how fit to print that is, but it's what I heard, and. As I said, we're quite friendly with each other, and the fact that, we're all still alive, I mean, it certainly wouldn't be, bad to give it another shot there.
Yeah. So one of the things Doug told me as well, around that time, he said he got offered the Dio gig and turned it down. Do you remember him telling you guys that at the time?
Well, I knew Doug. Obviously, it was pretty much, Doug and I, and then Cal and Mark, and so we put the two halves together because we were playing in a band, me and Doug, called Mansfield, and that had my brother in it playing drums and another singer who passed away. But so I was always tight with him, and he had confided in me, saying that, hey, I'm getting offers. I mean, that wasn't the only thing. What was bigger than that was Kiss. Where he came out, and he was staying with me. I was staying with my parents, and I remember Gene Simmons calling that house and asking for him, because this was pre-cell phone or what have you, and he was like, "Yeah, this is Gene Simmons. It's not a joke." So I mean, fit perfect, but. The point is that, he was a great talent, even young like that. And there was, other people coming at him, just, like you said, Ronnie. In fact, Ronnie told me once, he goes, "Hey man, I should have just hired Lion, to be my band." I was like, yeah, it's kind of funny the way that worked out,
Yeah. So the last time I spoke to you, one of the things I brought up was who won the Lion Masters. I want to know, is there any update on that? Because one of the things you said was that after so many years, they might revert back to you. And I also want to know, have you heard the remastered versions of the Lion albums that are out there?
Yeah, part one to that question in terms of the Masters, Mark had told me that they had been found actually in a factory somewhere in like Pennsylvania maybe. That and I said, well, what's kind of the status on that, or what have you? And he didn't know as well, but he said they had been located. In a different posting, Jody's friend from Capitol hit me up on Facebook or whatever and said, hey, I'm so-and-so, and I used to manage Sound City, and I have a couple, 2-inch masters of Trouble in Angel City here at the studio. And that was, I think, before because I think they were just going out of business. In fact, that's where I think Grohl got that mixing board for his studio from Sound City, if I remember correctly, which we cut that record on. We cut a few things on that. So apparently they do exist. Whether we can get our hands on them or not, that's a different story. As far as the re-releases, I think we're talking Rock Candy of recent, and then we're also talking, what's the guy there? Maybe 4 or 5 years ago, we were dealing with I forget what the hell his name is, but he put it out too. We licensed it to him or we had a say in it, but I think he also had a problem with CBS, who owned the Dangerous Attraction one. And he put out I think 500 of those. And as far as the mastering or whatever, it didn't sound like anything really happened to it, to be honest with you. It just sounded kind of like what it used to be. And sonically, that Dangerous Attraction record was really good because
fabulous sounding record.
Bill Friesch was the engineer. And, Dwayne Barron came in there a little bit. Same with Richie Wise. I mean, Richie not so much, but Dwayne was great, and that record, still sonically sounds great. I don't think Trouble in Angel City sounds as good as that record, but, that's how it goes. So
yeah. So when Doug and Cal formed Bad Moon Rising,
right?
Did they ask you to join?
No. I was playing with, at that time, there was a band with Frankie Banali and Gary Hoey that I played with called Heavy Bones. And with Joel was the singer, Joel Ellis. And we had a record deal ready to go with Warner Brothers there. And this was probably 1990. And right around that time, we got in a call. Doug had joined Hurricane, I think, at that time, and we did a benefit tour for Mark in Japan. And I came back from that, and they had got a different bass player there, but I was playing with them. So anyway, with Doug and Cal, Yeah, they, they didn't ask me. They asked, I think, Chuck Wright played on that, and I think maybe on or something, or, and then I think later on, Bad Moon Rising had Ian playing bass in it, if I recall correctly. But, and Mike had, Tramp had called me, I want to say in 90 from the road, with White Line, because I seen him around and whatever. And he was like, hey man, I want to form a new band with you. And it was always like kind of, well, okay, that's great. I don't, what do you got going? Cause I knew he was in that band, but I recall, he had called me and, we were going to start something. And he's like, listen, I just got to get, finished with this tour and then we'll put a band together. And, I didn't really think too much of it, but certainly true to his word, that's when I got involved in Freak of Nature. And I don't think, I don't know the Bad Moon Rising timeline of when they were putting out records. I think maybe 90, 91, maybe a little bit later than that.
Yeah.
But I had gotten the gig with Mike and we started putting that band together. So, I was busy. And, to say that I was, like a little bit hurt by the fact they didn't call me. I mean, yeah, they were my friends and stuff. But, business is business. I mean, people do different things for different reasons. And, that's the way that happened. If that was the case, I may have never been able to, I would have played with them and not played with Freak of Nature and then got the Dio gig because essentially, Ronnie, stepping back a little, Ronnie had seen Lion because we rehearsed right next to him at a studio in LA called Audible. And, so he was well aware of Doug. He knew, me as well. And he liked Cal and they got along fine. And so I think that's where that seed got planted. And when we went out on tour with supporting Freak of Nature, supporting Dio, we had 3 tours to choose from, actually, which was Deep Purple at that time, ZZ Top, and Dio. And I think Richie Blackmore didn't want to tour or something at that point or whatever, so that tour fell away. ZZ Top, the bass player, I think, shot himself in the hip. Had a gun in his pocket and went off and he shot himself. And so that tour was canceled. And then, so Ronnie's tour is what we ended up going on. And that's where I think Ronnie was like, oh yeah, I remember this guy. And, at least that's what he told me later, from what it was. But, I'd known, those guys, because we rehearsed right next to them. And that was the early band too. That was, I think, Viv, which I think Viv was only like 21 maybe or so. He was pretty young. And it was, Jim Bain and Ronnie and Claude and, Vinny.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jerry, I got a couple of more questions I want to ask you about Heavy Bones. Of course, the guitar player in that, Gary Hoey, he's from the next town over, more or less from where I live.
Sure he is, yeah.
I read in one of the Dio books when they were going through his discography. This author called Martin Popoff does these books, and he interviews all the band members. And So one of the things in the book when they talked about Lock Up the Wolves was that Vinny and Jimmy wanted Gary Hoey as the guitar player, and Ronnie wanted Rowan Robertson. Now you were in a band with Gary. Did Gary ever bring that up?
Yeah, well, it's interesting to talk about that. Yeah, because Gary said to me, and it's kind of funny because this is after I played with Ronnie, or that was that lineup you're talking about. Actually, the Lock Up the Wolves, I think, it was 1990, and that was during the time that I was playing with Gary. Later years passed, right, and obviously he didn't get the gig with them. But I remember Gary saying to me, he goes, Ronnie and Wendy were both sitting there going, yeah, I just don't think he has the magic, and I thought to myself, I had to laugh because I was like, Gary's a pretty talented guy. Whether or not he would fit in Dio is a different story, but I think he certainly would have. I think he's, as I said, I have respect for him. and I think it would have been fine. But I think Rowan looked a little bit different, maybe have been a little bit younger, if I recall.
He was 17.
Yeah, for that particular gig. And, Wendy had a lot to say with it. I mean, Wendy, a lot of people don't realize, was, she used to be Richie Blackmore's girlfriend, and she used to work at the Rainbow out here in L.A., and that's how they met. And that's, then Richie was probably done with her and said, yeah, hey, Ronnie, if you want to, hang out with her, go ahead. And then, she needed a green card. And so, what I had heard was essentially that, him getting with her was to help her out, because he's from upstate New York and he was American, and to help her get a green card. And then she became his manager, then his wife. So,
So the other thing, Jerry, you say on your website is that you fell out with the guys in Heavy Bones. Did you fall out with all three of them? Was it personal or business?
No, it was just they had a manager who was managing Bullet Boys at the time, Dave
Kaplan.
Dave Kaplan, yeah, as a matter of fact. And they gave me the song, the publishing splits on 3 or 4 songs that I helped write with them. But when I say I fell out with them, it wasn't because there was any words or whatever. It's just that when I got back from Japan from that tour, they're like, hey, look, we got this other, guy because you were away and whatever. And I'm like, well, I was gone for 3 weeks. So that's why I say I fell out with them, because it was like, really, you're going to replace me because I'm, not here. That's one thing. But, since then, I've talked to Gary. I talked to Joel on that last tour, the last White Line, because he's like in Cleveland or something. And, Frankie, no problem. I've known Frankie for a long time. In fact, he was probably the best mate that I had in that band was with him. So
nice. So
yeah.
So I've got a bunch of old magazines at home, the Kerrangs and that. And
right.
Kerrang were big supporters of Freak of Nature. So I'm able to pull up the magazines and read back then what they were saying about you. But I remember there was an article in it that when the band was more or less announced in Kerrang, that Mike Tramp said in the early press that he emphasised that the band was not a solo project.
Right.
How did that manifest itself over the records that you did, though?
Well, Mike started the band with his money, with his White Lion money. He was quite well off at the time, flying guys in from Denmark, his buddy Ollie. And, when we got Kenny to play guitar out of New York and stuff, and he had a fat, pad down on the beach in Santa Monica. So, he basically got the band going with that money in terms of, the little money we had received from Music for Nations, which I don't even think are still around anymore, but that's who we had to deal with in England. And then as it progressed, it was more, okay, well, I'm going to recoup some of this money back from the sales of these records and whatever and stuff. And we did a lot of touring. We did a lot of merch business. And, it was fine. What ended that band was basically, I think, burnout, from a couple of the guys. And it just, that we lost our deal. We needed another guitar player. Actually hired Marcus, which is kind of ironic now when I look back, because he was quite young at that time too. And I kind of took him under my wing, because he was on my side of the stage, and, spoke to him and, got him going and what have you. And now, come to find out, he writes, he's got some songs with Rod Stewart, and, he's done quite well for himself, and I'm happy for that. And, when Mike had said, oh, yeah, I guess he's playing guitar, I said, well, that's kind of like 3/4 of Mark III Freak of Nature,
Mm-hmm.
Hey, this is Joe Perry. It was the Focus on Metal.
The image of the band, when I look back at photographs now, it's like mid-90s, early mid-90s. You definitely dressed with the flannels and the stuff like that. Was that a conscious decision to try and blend in?
Yeah, I certainly think so. That was at the time, the grunge look, where, it wasn't about spandex and hair spray and any of that bullshit, because of, the change in times, man. You had, Nirvana, of course. I mean, that story, it's beaten into the ground, basically long, and it did. But, you have to understand that the record labels were also looking for what was current, not, hard rock or whatever. And, obviously the hard rock made a revival when it came back in the early 80s because of MTV. But as far as our image in Freak of Nature, most certainly was trying to be current with what, was at the time, the Soundgardens or the Pearl Jams or, whoever, Alice in Chains. And, I don't know if it really worked. I mean, luckily I still have a 4-head instead of an 8-head in terms of a hairline. And, it's a little bit different, obviously, than leather and studs and that, going into with flannels and, camo and what have you. And, I suppose there's some good images of the band out there like that, but, I don't dress that way these days. So I think it was certainly trying to keep up with the times.
Now, you had Dennis Chick in the band for a while, right?
Yeah.
I remember contacting him a while back, or I put something on Facebook or whatever about the House of Lords record that he did, Demons Down, before he did Freak of Nature.
Right.
Did he ever mention his stint in House of Lords to you? Because he's pictured on the CD, but he hardly plays on the record at all. I think that band were known for doing that. They did it with a guy called Michael Guy on the album before, and they had Doug play all of the guitars.
That's right. Greg Giuffria definitely is kind of that way. And I remember even from Doug, him telling me, about midnight recordings and stuff. And he's like, yeah, I had to go in and replace some stuff and whatever. And as far as Dennis is concerned, Dennis was pretty young at that point too. He had a local band called VVSI, actually, that used to play around when Mansfield did, and then early Lion. And he was a pretty young guy. He was a good-looking guy, and he could play. But I think he any talk about that always seemed to be that, Greg Giuffria just kind of bossed him around and whatever, and he didn't really feel, he was like the young guy amongst, what was it, Tommy Aldridge.
Yeah.
Right, and was it Chuck Wright, I think, in that too?
Sean McNabb.
Sean, okay. Yeah, so who was that James? Who was the singer?
James Christian, yeah.
James, okay, that's what I thought. Yeah, he just said he got bullied, from what I recall in that situation. So, they maybe were trying to replace Doug at that point, if I think of how it went down. But I could be wrong. I don't know. Doug was before him, wasn't he?
Correct, yeah. He did most of the Sahara record, and then he did the tour.
Right.
And then they got in all these session players, but they had Dennis pictured on the back of the record.
Right.
But he told me that he hardly played on it at all. They all got all these session guys in.
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah. So one of the things you guys did with Freak of Nature was you spent a lot of time in Europe. And I want to ask you, Jerry, personally, was that a difficult thing to commit to because of all the traveling back and forth and where you were with your personal life at the time?
Yeah, I had to be, probably at that time, maybe 28, 29 years old or so, maybe 30. I'm not, when I look back at it. And, it wasn't bad because I didn't mind traveling. And to this day, I don't mind it because I like newer places. I like culture. I like to see what it's like there. I mean, I see the way fans respond, whether it be, in Japan or in South America or in Europe, Australia, what have you. And it was rough. I mean, we were out, that first Freak of Nature tour, it was over 100 shows in like 8 months or something. And, there was a lot of travel. I mean, some of the guys didn't really like the traveling, Johnny Harrow or, even Kenny, it was difficult. But, someone like Mike, I mean, he tours all the time and certainly doesn't mind the travel. At this age, it's a little bit different. I'm not so inclined, I turn things down all the time, where they're like, we have a bus and we'll do this, and, here's the pay and whatever. And I'm like, look, get someone who's younger and better than I am. They'll deal with that, because it's like you get used to, a certain, level. And, with Mike, it's a pretty easy tour, the way we do it. So there's rooms every night and food and everything. And I don't have to worry about much. I can just come in and play and, sing, Now
you with Freak of Nature, I know you did festivals, and then you did, club shows, the whole lot. What was the toughest crowd you played to? I'm going to go out on a limb here and say it was probably somewhere in Germany, because they can be pretty tough, especially when you're opening for someone like Dio.
Well, all right, Richie, where's your accent from?
I'm Irish.
Okay, so guess where I was going to tell you?
Belfast.
Was pretty. Now let me get you straight on this, right? Nothing against the Irish people or anything like that. But when we played Belfast at good old Ulster Hall, which was fantastic.
Yeah.
My road manager got rolled for a couple $100 out of the dressing room. And then we were going after the gig to go to our hotel rooms, or actually before the gig to the hotel rooms. They had been bombed some days prior, and there was no lodging. So we had to use our bus as a dressing room, whatever, which is no big deal. And, you're doing a meet and greet after. Well, we obviously came up from the ferry, across and up to Dublin and drove up. But when we were on our way back, my road manager was counting the heads and all, he figured, okay, hey, the whole band, the crew are here. But someone was in the bathroom. There was a punter who got in the bathroom and stowed away on the bus and was on the way back down to, the ferry. And we certainly didn't know whether or not, the guys, got bombs on them, whatever the deal was. We launched him in the middle of a field, at like 2 a.m. But, I have very fond memories of Belfast. The crowd was lovely, and I only wanted to bring that up because you said you were Irish. But that was not to answer your question. That's not what it is. To me, toughest crowd. I'll tell you what, Manchester in the UK.
Okay.
We had a big dust up. We had a big rumble before we went on stage with their security. Fist fights, the whole thing. We weren't even going to play because these guys, they're serious bruisers, and it's just a tough town. And, I remember playing that gig, and it just, we're all like bleeding and bruised up and shit. We didn't even know we were going to do the gig. But basically because we had that dust up with their security, that was just getting into the venue.
Wow.
So, yeah. I tell you, Richie, unbelievable, So, however, we played Dublin too. I think we were supposed to play in Cork, but never got down that far, I don't know if bands play down there.
Not really.
Not.
So, yeah, it's normally Dublin, Belfast, and that's it.
Right.
When you did the festivals, one of the things they do with the festivals is they throw bottles at you could have piss in them. You don't know what's in them. Did that happen at all?
No, it happened. Well, I'll tell you what. We did a gig in Wales, and town was that? I have to think about it, but we were in Wales, and I remember we're playing, and Kenny was on my side always, and I saw this guy taking a piss right there on the floor into his cup, and I'm like, look out, man, that thing's coming up, watch him 2 or 3. And the guy just goes crazy, takes his shirt off, just, it's like this, and pours it over his head. And I'm like, God. I was like, okay, at least it didn't come up on the stage, but yeah, I totally have seen that before. So I get it,
Yeah, so the German crowds were pretty okay. I've spoken to a lot of musicians over the years, like the King's X guys come to mind, and when they supported AC/DC, they got shit thrown at them, toilet brushes, everything in Germany. They said it was horrible.
Yeah, I can't say I've ever experienced bad times really in Germany. As a matter of fact, playing the Reeperbahn one of the first gigs of that first Freak of Nature tour, when we were touring with Dweezil, with Z, I think his band was called, because they were on Music for Nations as well. And you know, that I don't know if you've ever been to Hamburg, but man, that's some rowdy shit there with the hookers. That's the fights and you know, oh yeah, it's interesting. But you know, yeah, Germany for me, I mean, no problem.
No problem. With Freak of Nature, could you see the end coming, or was it a shock?
No, I could see, you know, people were, you know, leaving, you know, and it was just, you know, people were getting tired of each other as well, because, I mean, we'd done a lot of touring, and when Marcus came in, you know, he was kind of like a new kid on the block and, like, tail wagging and stuff, and, you know, we were kind of burnt out, and, you know, I was getting calls from some other stuff, and then I got that call from Ronnie, and I was like, you know, I'm going to go ahead and do this, because that was like right at the end there. It was maybe 95 or so. Okay.
Do you audition to join Dio's band, or do you just go in and he knows how good you are?
Happened was, and it's kind of interesting. So we're down at his studio, and all of a sudden, you know, I see Sean McNabb, and I see all these bass player friends of mine, you know, Chuck and, you know, whatever. I'm like, oh, here we go. And so I go in there and I play with them. And Ronnie says to me, he goes, look, man, you know, I like you. I want you to play, and I'm just going to tell these guys to go home or whatever. And I said, well, that's really cool, Ronnie. No problem. So he walks me out with him. He goes, okay, we're going to go with Jerry. You guys can go home. And I was like, well, did you have to do it in front of me? I mean, I'm telling you, to this day, Sean McNabb is pissed at me. You know, I'm like, okay, well, so what? I mean, how many gigs do you have, Sean? You know, plenty.
Jerry,
you know?
When he did that, had you gone into the room and played with him, or did he just know you were good enough?
Played, but he knew me pretty much. He said that he had made the decision, is what Ronnie told me, and he said Wendy had already asked these guys to come down, and the auditions were set up. So he said, just go along with it. You know, he said, but you have the gig. And it was great, because Mike and Ez, you know, who's a friend of mine, you know, was there. He goes, dude, man, he fucking slayed that. He goes, it's really great. He goes, I think Alice is going to tour with you guys. I was like, fuck. You know, it was awesome. But, yeah, Mike's a great guy. So it's just interesting how that happened.
How different a drummer is Vinny to play to compared to, say, a Frankie Banali or a Mark Edwards?
Well, I'll tell you what. He's playing way behind the beat, like kind of English style. And I had to adjust my style to play with him, because he was so far behind, you know. And the one, it's like, you know, by the time you hit that one, man, I'll be over here, you know, waiting for you, just because that's how he played it. And Vinny loved that style, that he, you know, would pull back that way. He wasn't so much on top of the beat like those drummers, like Frankie or Mark were. So it was different from my style.
Okay, but that's good for you, though, as a bass player.
Yeah, it was okay. I mean, the idea is, you know, to me, you know, bass player, you got to realize the role in the band, you know, and you're basically gluing together the guitar and the drums, and have to, you know, play with a sense of that's what your role is, you know. And, you know, those bands I played in, I mean, there was kind of no room for improvisation or any jamming. I mean, it was kind of set how you played it, you know, and you have to realize that first before you can actually do it. And, you know, someone like Vinny, you know, I couldn't just come in and play the way I normally play without adjusting to, you know, how he plays. So,
but one of the things I found out over the years with Ronnie and the bands he gets together is all the ideas come from jams where you're all actually playing together rather than somebody coming in with a song.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's how I got a couple of songwriting credits with him.
Yeah, so surely that must have been really good for you as a bass player.
Oh, absolutely. Are you kidding? I'm grateful as hell, you know. And they released one of those songs on radio Record Day maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and I had to deal with Wendy on the publishing for that. So
okay. Now you wrote on the initial sessions for Angry Machines, and you did some touring with Ronnie. At the time, were you confident that your stint was going to last longer than it actually did?
Well, I thought so, but the thing is that I replaced, you know, Jeff Pilson, because he went to go play with Doc, and it was like their first reunion thing, and then that ended, I think, because Don and George Lynch got in a fight, and I think Jeff was sitting on the sideline going, "Hey man, I'm back from this early or whatever," and they, he came in and played after I did again. So,
and then he left again after when the record was done.
Larry, this other guy I know, Larry Dennison, who is a good bass player, but I was. I don't know what I was doing at that time. I didn't get the gig back. So,
were you doing the Mike Tramp record, the Capricorn record?
I was, because that's getting right to be later in the 90s for me. I think what was that record, like 98 or something?
97, 98, I think, yeah.
Yeah, that's right, because I remember I was living with my cousin at the time, who was a drummer, and he was playing with this girl, Jewel, actually, and I said, man, you should come and do some tracks. We're going to cut some tracks up at Granny's in Reno with Tramp, and I introduced him, and he ended up playing on the record because of that. So it's pretty cool.
Was it different doing a solo record with Mike, his mindset? Because was it a band, or was it his? It
was pretty much. It was, solo, Mike Tramp. But I certainly had enough freedom to play bass I wanted to play, and I really enjoy some of the tracks on that Capricorn record, but Mike is a pretty prolific songwriter. I mean, he can write, how many solo records does the guy have? I mean, it's kind of ridiculous, in terms of he's always writing, and he has a certain way in his mind of how he does it and what have you. And he'll program, the drums and whatever, but he always left the bass open for me, which was always cool. So I could kind of do what I do,
Jerry, you've known Mike a long time, but when you first started working with him and really got to know him, what was the one thing about him that surprised you about him?
His work ethic was something else. I mean, the band, Freakin' Nature wouldn't have done all those tour dates if it wasn't for him, just saying, look, we need a great agent. I want to work a lot. I want a lot of dates. And even for a singer, and Mike, knows like his limitations. I remember him once saying to me, he goes, listen, man, my vocal range is from E to F, but I know how to work in that range. And sure enough, he does. And he, with these songs, the songs of White Lion, those songs are all transposed down, 4 steps so he can sing them. Unlike, the regular recorded versions, which, some people don't necessarily like, but to me, it sounds actually better. And I think the songs come across more, but that's my opinion. When he was singing White Lion, he said to me, oh, that's kind of the helium voice, and I knew what he meant by that. But, this sounds a lot more mature. And the people, after touring last year with it, I didn't know what to expect. Because, you have people that, are like, hey, if it's not Vito, it's not White Lion. And, you have all the naysayers or whatever. I mean, I get along just greatly with James, Lomenzo, J-Lo, the original J-Lo. And the name is the only thing really in question, because I think Vito owns that name. And obviously when they're booking Tramp, it has to be Tramp's White Lion or whatever. And then next thing you know, the promoters will conveniently lose the Mike Tramp part of it, to get more, people in there.
Yeah. Yeah. So
it's not his fault, that they do that, but I can't tell you how many times he's been, pissed off, and just they do it every time, and people, are like, this isn't White Lion. And it's like, well, you got the guy who sang it and wrote, the lyrics right along with Vito, he has a right to it too.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned,
True. So Jerry, why do you think you and Mike work so well together? Because you've been playing with him for so many years.
I think there's a degree of respect there that, I came along. He needed me when I came along, and realized he's always, put me in a really good place, and really, I I'm humbled to say that, the guy, I get along with him just fine, whether it's, mentally or even playing or, just conversation. I mean, he's quite a worldly guy, and I have a lot of respect for him. I mean, he's certainly shifted a lot of units, back in those days. I mean, White Lion and stuff. I mean, as a matter of fact, I think when he quit, they had two songs in the top 10, which, who does that? I mean, it's not really the smartest thing to do, but I guess if you're that unhappy,
Yeah. Has there ever been talk, especially in Europe, of asking you to do Freak of Nature shows over there? Maybe a couple of festival dates?
There's people that's asked and whatever, and we actually got together, I think, in, I want to say maybe 2017 or 2018, just to have a play, and that was fine, but I think Mike had, he had other plans. He just wanted to see if it worked. I mean, Dennis came out, and it was Kenny, and I don't think it was Marcus, actually. It was just those two, the original, and, nothing ever came out of it, but we got together. Nice.
So the rest of the year now is just you playing with Mike, is it?
That's correct. Right now I don't have anything else going.
Okay, and that's the way you want it.
Well, that's okay with me. I mean, I want to get writing some more. I mean, I write songs too, and I have 18 songs in my catalog that are co-writes. In fact, I got a co-write with Bernie Taupin, and I'm really proud of that. When I was working with Courtney, I mean, basically all those songs came out of when I was working with Linda Perry, and who was working with Courtney, and I'd like to explore a little bit more of that. I just had a song placed in a really bad movie with who's a girl from Transformers. That girl was in it, and Machine Gun Kelly. And it was called this movie called Switchblade, Midnight in the Switchblade, or some bullshit. But me and Jody watched it not too long ago, and we're like, God, what a terrible film. But yeah. Well, no, it had a bunch of money. Megan Fox, that's her name.
Yeah.
It had the Machine Gun Kelly, and it had Bruce Willis, of all things. I think they just got Bruce Willis. He had like 10 lines in the whole thing, just for the the marquee value. But anyway, I got a song placed in that with Michael Lee Jackson, who is actually used to play with Ian Gillan and in his solo band, and it's funny, I call him the White Michael Jackson, and I co-wrote a song with him, so it was cool.
Mm-hmm. Final question for me, Jerry. You're always come across as a guy that you can fit into all these different types of bands, and you played a lot of different types of music, but there must have been occasions in your career where someone asked you to audition or maybe play with a band, or you went and auditioned and didn't get the gig. Is there any stands out for you? Any big names?
Well, yeah, that would be Ozzy.
Oh.
So yeah, I went down. This had to be right after or right before. I want to say Freak of Nature. I want to say 91, 92. It was with Randy Castillo and Zach. Was in his band, and went down to Joe's Garage, which is a studio out here in LA that Frank Zappa owned. Anyway, and got to play with those guys. I mean, we played Sweet Home Alabama. We played, I think Paranoid or something. But Ozzy was actually there. It was cool. I got a call back on that gig, and I was like, holy shit, this could be pretty cool. So I went down again and hung out and got a gig, but that was pretty cool. That was actually Mike and Ez saying to me, yeah, man, I only got this gig because I was in Alice in Chains and we were supporting, Ozzy, and that's where he saw him, and Sharon was just like, oh, you should just get, Mike. And I was like, okay, I know how that goes.
Oh, man.
But that would have been cool.
Yes, could have been.
It could have lit my career, going a little bit good. So, you know what, Richie, I mean, you take shots on goal. And sometimes it has nothing to do with your playing, Sometimes it has nothing to do with maybe it's the way you hang with people, or maybe there's so many little things, and that's how it goes. But
you could be the best bass player in the world, and if you're a dick and you're stuck on a bus with someone for months on end, it's not going to work.
Richie, exactly correct. Exactly correct. And it just, I'm not in here to slag anybody or whatever. I mean, we've all been through it and stuff, and I'm just grateful that my phone rings and that Jody tells me about stuff occasionally and whatever, and it's I'm pretty lucky guy. Yeah. So,
well, Jerry, it's been a pleasure talking to you again. And,
you got it, Rich.
Okay, Jerry.
Fantastic, Richie. Have a swell day, man.
You too. Nice Take care of yourself. Okay. Bye.
Take care.
All right, guys, that is a wrap for this week. Thanks again for tuning in. Even though we are getting pretty spotty in our episode release, I do appreciate that still a huge amount of support, Focus on Metal out there. And it is not gone without notice. Big shout out of thank you to Jerry for taking a crap load of time to sit down with Richie and go through all of Richie's questions about a crap load of a timeline. And I hope you guys enjoyed the Aussie stories and the Lion stories and the Freakin' Nature stories and the Dio stories and all that. I mean, Jerry packed in a lot of stuff in that, almost 50 minutes of interview this week. And, as he talked about, you're going to have another Mike Tramp's White Lion tour going out there that Jerry will be on. So you want to go catch Jerry live, then, check out for the dates on that tour. And hell, if you haven't bought any of the Lion releases, hey, go back and buy one or two of those and throw some coin Jerry's way. And I also got to say, I don't know how the fuck Richie remembered out of the blue the name of the Bullet Boys manager. I'm still scratching my head on that one, and I bet Jerry was like, how the fuck does this guy know that? We have a couple good things coming up. I know that Richie did a great interview with another new musician, Drew Cagle, and that is in my queue to edit up. So that might be a, spin an interview and a little bit of chat with Richie and myself if we can get time that he can get down to the studio. And then I know that he had another interview scheduled this week with a returning Focus on Metal guest. So hopefully that went off without a hitch as well. And we had a few other ones that were scheduled, and then we got kind of into the PR dickhead game.
It's killing me, it's killing me, it's killing me, it's killing me. Everything pisses me off. Everything pisses me off. Everything pisses me off.
Where suddenly they want stats. I mean, you're giving them free promotion. It's pretty obvious you have a huge listener base. We're carried on at this point, I think, 30, almost 40 some odd different channels. And they're getting picky about, we don't want to, give you 20 minutes or whatever. So a lot of those actually ended up falling through, which was kind of shitty. But I noticed overall with a lot of that PR for a lot of those artists and albums that, there wasn't very much of it, because at the end of the day, you get all picky and then you have no outlets to actually tout your shit. But lots of other stuff coming up, and I know that Jay's eager to hop in here as well. And we have a topic that's been brewing probably for about 4 months at this point to talk about, and more good stuff on the way. And it's definitely, if you're interested in kind of the origins of the show and you want to go back and see where things started way back in 2010, 2011 and stuff, I'm going to continue to add those episodes in, fill those out, and you can just kind of even just to go in and see what the hell we were up to back in those days. It's been fun for me because I forgot about a lot of those shows that we did, and it was like, holy crap, just like it's like going back to a time machine. So, if you go up to focusonmetalpod.com, or you can even go to focusonmetal.net and it'll ping you over to focusonmetalpod.com. But, you go to the episodes and go down to see 2010 and you'll get all those, or 2011, you'll get all those, and or as much as I filled in so far, and see what we were up to back in the day when the crew was Jay and Dario and Mandy, and also John Caddick from Iron City Rocks was a frequent contributor / co-host as well, and obviously myself. So if you're curious, Focus on Metal in the pre-Richie era, I'm slowly building that history back up. And I'm sure that when Richie finally gets down, we're going to talk about some of the concerts that I've been going to. I know that, those of you that follow me on X, that I was posting pictures from a lot of those. I got a lot of good responses on X about the photos I put up on the M72 show at Foxborough. And so I'm sure we're going to get into that one. So I would be looking forward to seeing that in an upcoming episode, as Richie probably gives me shit about either my constant vinyl buying or my constant concert going. And I know for sure that he's definitely going to give me shit about my boys Aerosmith backing out. But if you haven't caught M72 and it's coming towards you and you have tickets still available, I urge you to go ahead and check that show out. Great set list both nights, and I think you'd be happy. Other than that, that's it for this week. There ain't no more stick a fork in it. This puppy is done. So for myself, Richie, and everybody else here at Focus on Metal, thanks again for listening. Have yourselves a great metal week. And as always, remember,
Focus on Metal.
Everything else is insignificant.
Still here? It's over. Go home.